Well, Shabbat Shalom. Hope everybody has had a good, safe week. And let's turn in our books to page 10 or 128, and let's sing together how good it is, how sweet it is that all of us are here together. Hine Matov. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, יאללה לה לה יה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, יאללה לה לה יה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, יאללה לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. How beautiful this day is. Let's have a sweet Shabbat. Ma Yafeh Hayom. And that again is on page 10 or 128. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. 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 Shabbat Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Well, let's now take our prayer books in hand, if you have them, and we'll turn to the special prayer for the Shabbat day. You'll find this on page 22 or 140. And if you have this, read it with me. It's Psalm 92. A song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness at each night. With a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai, how very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know. A fool cannot understand this. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. Tzadik katamar yifrach ki yered Yishka Shetulim B'veit Adonai B'chatzrot Eloheinu Yam Ba'africhu Od Yenuvun V'seva T'shenim V'radamanim Yiyu Lehagi Ki Yashar Adonai Tsuri Velo Avlata Well, let's come together as a congregation and let's bless God together with the Baruch Hu. You're going to find this on 28 or 146. And if you would, stand up and sing with me. Yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 yai la 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamivovo Ramach Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Leolam Vav Hamivorach Leolam Vav Emed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. Y'all can sit down, and let's turn in our prayer books to page 155. I'm sorry. Let's turn to 147 or 264. 147 or 264. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom. Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures. Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv Aravinim. We thank God for the gift of Torah. This is on page 148 or 266, Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Hamavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbeinu u'v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratcha u'v'mitzvot tavavemcha l'me'olam va'ed ki hein chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu uvahem nege yomam valayla yomam valayla ma v'ahavatcha al tasir mimenu liyom olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. 149 or 267, the Shema. We focus on God's presence right here, right now, as we cover our eyes for the first 6 words of the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shemem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Together in Israel, together in English. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. 150 or 268, the commandment to love God via Haftarah. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'otecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha ma'avava hayavon ma'levavecha v'shinantam levademecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'ademerech u'v'shachbecha u'v'kumbecha u'geshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot b'hineinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'she'aremecha l'ma tizkeru v'asitem ekol mitzvotai v'heitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Eloechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. The translation together. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Page 151 or 269, this is a meditation on our liberation from slavery. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all. Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound. Before our eyes, there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul. When will redemption come? When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves. Long ago, we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High. We learned God's presence redeems time and event. So we celebrate this power that makes for freedom with the Song of Freedom, Micha Mocha, on page 152 or 270. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 la
Lie, lie, la 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 la, lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Mi chamo chama, Maelim Adonai. Mi kamo chama, Nehedar bakom v'chodesh. Nora tehilot, Obosei vele. Malchutecha va'uvanecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam zayet mili anu v'yameru Adonai yimloch leolam v'ne'emar Amar kifada Adonai et Yaakov Uge alomi yamad mi chazak mihimenu Baruch ata Adonai Gal Yisra Gamama Yemel Ya la 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 lie 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 Ya la 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 lie lie la la lie La 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 lie 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 la 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 lie Lie la 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 lie la lie Love my lie. Who is like you, O God, among all the gods that are worshipped? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. A prayer that we all need right now, a prayer for safety and peace and to be secure. Page 153 or 271. Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence, we find love and acceptance. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace over all we love, over our Jerusalem and over yours. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. V'al Yerushalayim v'al kol amo v'al Yerushalayim Shalom Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael. Page 154 or 272, middle of the page. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat L'dorotam Brit Olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti liyavav olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael Oti leolam Kisheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'yamim et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i shavamvat vayinafash shavamvat vayinafash. The silent prayer, the tefillah, we're going to find this on 155 to 167 or 273 to 285. You can be guided by that, or if you prefer, speak the prayer of your own heart and direct your thoughts to God. We stand up for this, and when we've completed our prayer, we can sit down. If you're still praying, continue silently. But if you've completed your prayers, you can sit down and you can join with me in a prayer to lift up our spirits to God. A little wordless prayer, a melody. Yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai lai lai la mai yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai lai yai la 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 lai 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 ya la lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 yai la 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 lai 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 ya la lai 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 Yai lai, yai la 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 lai, yai lai la la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai, yai la 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 lai, yai lai lai la lai, yai lai lai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai lai la mai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai la 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 lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. Well, a few words of Torah. In the reading that's done today, there's a verse from chapter 2, verse 3 that goes like this. You have had enough of going around this mountain. Turn yourselves to the north. This is telling the Jewish people the way to go to ultimately to get to the promised land. And there's a kind of an ethical interpretation of this by a Hasidic rabbi, Binyamin ben Aaron of Zholozha, or the Torah Zahav. And he says, we're taught that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, appears like a mountain. Now, I heard in the name of my rabbi, Nachman Kosover, a reading from the Mishnah, which says, all of the holiest offerings or sacrifices are slaughtered to the north of the altar. So the Yetzer Hara entices people to commit serious sins. But in the case of a person who's really righteous, a tzaddik, who has already overcome the Yetzer Hara several times, the Yetzer Hara begins by convincing him to do a mitzvah, an act of love of God or a kind act that really turns out to be a great sin. It might, let me say about this next section, sometimes Jews in Eastern Europe, when the Hasidim were there, if they were arguing with each other or they didn't like each other, they would turn one over to the authorities to be arrested. A terrible thing that existed for our Jewish people, but they figured this person is not a good person, and so we will turn him over to the authorities. So a thing that doesn't seem like a sin, that seems like a mitzvah, might involve informing on a person or publicly shaming somebody who's done something wrong. Just a bit of improper motivation is brought in, something you don't realize unless you look into it with great care. Only then do you feel it. Because of this, the righteous person has to be awake always, not letting go of this self-awareness, even for a minute. So let's apply this to the verse and to the thing from the Mishnah. Entirely holy offerings, those are the righteous people, are slaughtered to the north. What this means is the Yetzer Hara slaughters righteous people on matters that are hidden. Now, the word for north, tzafun, or tzafon, actually, if it's tzafon, it means north. But if you read it tzafun, it means hidden. So the righteous get tripped up on sins that are not obvious, sins that are secret or subtle. So the Yetzer Hara knows that the tzaddik won't follow him into doing a sin that everybody knows is a sin. Now, this is not true of some ordinary people. They may do sins even though they know it is. But the offerings of lesser holiness are slaughtered anywhere. That means people who aren't very aware, who aren't very righteous, they get caught up in sin and they can be slaughtered by the Yetzer Hara. At least this is what the rabbi taught him. So the righteous people, they don't do the sins that are obvious, but the ones that are subtle, that are hard to be aware of, they do, or they're at risk of doing. So when we say you have had enough of going around this mountain, it means you need to fight always to distance yourself from evil. You go around and around that mountain, but don't go close to it. Don't go close to sin. Now, when it says turn yourselves to the tzafon, or the tzafun, the hidden sins, the north, pay attention to those kind of secret sins and wrong ways of turning. Those things you don't notice in the course of turning around and keeping far from sin. Come to serve God in truth and wholeness, even when it comes to the hidden things. So there's some things everybody knows it's wrong. And some people, even though they know it's wrong, they do it anyway. But there are some sins as we've mentioned, that are more subtle. We all know the saying, the end justifies the means. So we can tell a white lie, we think, to do a mitzvah. It's okay to cut corners in business for our family, to get money for our family. Or, that guy over there, he's a real jerk. He's a bad guy. So it's okay to trash talk about him to other people or to get him in trouble. You know what? He deserves it, especially since I am a good guy. So you see, Ben Aharon, the teacher Benjamin Ben Aharon, wants us to guard from the improper motivation, to look at things carefully, to be self-aware, to know our blind spots, and to know our weaknesses. Two stories about this. Both of them you may have heard before. One of them is Rabbi Salanter, who was one of the founders of the Musar movement. The story is told by several people, but it's sometimes attributed to Salanter. So he woke up and he got up early and he wanted to say his prayers. And the Yetzer Hara, the impulse to do evil, came to him and said, Salanter, it's early in the morning and you're an old man. Sleep a little bit more. You don't got to get up to say your prayers. And Salanter said to the Yetzer Hara, you know what? You're older than I am. You got up earlier than I did. And so I'm going to get up right now and I'm going to say my prayers. The Yetzer Hara can really tell us to cut some slack. In fact, our teachers tell us that sometimes the Yetzer Hara appears as a righteous rabbi with a long beard studying Torah. He's tricky. The Yetzer Hara is not a real person. Most of us, certainly me, most of our teachers don't believe in a literal Satan. But when we talk about the Yetzer Hara, we personify it so we can understand that the Yetzer Hara is something that we've really got to recognize, pay attention to, and push back from. A second story, again, you may have heard this. A Zen master and his disciple came to a river. Well, you know what? I'm going to change the story. I'm going to change it a little bit. Okay. So a very holy rabbi and a student came to the river, and they were going to cross the river. And they saw that this beautiful, beautiful woman was standing there and hesitant because she had nice clothes on and she didn't want to get her clothes wet in the river. So the rabbi said to her, come here. He picked her up, put her on his back, and he crossed the river with his student. He let her go. She went this way. The rabbi and the student went that way. They were going to shul. They kept going. And they walked a long way. And finally, the student said to the rabbi, Rabbi, that woman, was it really the right thing to pick her up and cross the river with her? And the rabbi said, my son, I picked up the woman and I put her down on the other side of the river, but you're still carrying her. So sometimes when we are self-righteous or self-interested, we can make excuses for behavior or points of view that are not really so good. So we got to be subtle. We got to understand these subtle things and look carefully. Now, Rabbi Arthur Green, who wrote the book I got this from, selected this teaching. He has the following observations. The path of the righteous person has to be one of constant self-examination and questioning of motives. How to do this without undercutting the wholeness and simplicity needed to serve God in joy is itself a secret, one of the great balancing acts of the religious life. So what we ideally should be doing is looking very carefully at ourselves, at our biases, and looking very carefully at the situation and figure out what to do, but not get so obsessed that we drive ourselves crazy or get in despair, because there's no reason to make ourselves miserable as long as we've looked at it carefully. Good enough. If we make ourselves miserable, there's no point, and maybe we may go around making other people miserable. In our Jewish faith, there's happiness is important. In fact, Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav said, a famous saying, it is a great mitzvah to be happy all the time. He was exaggerating. There are times, sad times, times of grief. You don't have to be happy then. But it is a mitzvah to be as happy as you can be. But that doesn't mean that you turn away from looking at things that are serious to try to figure out what the right thing is to do. Now, sometimes we think we study Torah to get an answer. How should we live our lives? But I think we study Torah for other reasons. We may know what the right thing to do is. So we study Torah to inspire us, to make the effort to do the right thing. But also by studying Torah, we orient ourselves to thinking very logically and very deeply and thinking about it a lot, exactly what the right thing to do. We develop a habit of mind and a habit of spirit that allows us to figure out what the right thing to do, what the ethical thing to do. And studying Torah also can help us know ourselves better, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. And when we know that, we can make better choices. Thanks very much. As always, I'm interested in thoughts that you have on what I've talked about, and please feel free to contact me. At this point, we're going to turn back to our prayer books, and we're going to turn to page 253, or in the big book, it's the other book, it's 371 for the Misha Berach prayer, and we especially want to remember for prayers for health and healing our friends Mark and our friend Judy and Danny. I want to remember my Rabbi Steve. I want to remember my friends Lisa and Steve. I want to remember my clients Stephanie and Beverly, and really all of my clients and everybody that needs somebody to say Misha Berach for them. And I hope that you also, if there are people you care about that I haven't mentioned, hold their names and their faces in your heart and pray for their healing. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBeracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBeracha La'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Let's prepare to praise God with the Aleinu. We'll find this on 282 or 587. Please stand up. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo samchalkenu kahem, v'gora leinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu klorim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, Malchei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We've just praised the sovereign of the universe, proclaiming the greatness of the Creator, who has set us apart from other families of the earth, giving the Jewish people a destiny unique among the nations. That's the reason we bent our knees and bowed down, acknowledging the supreme sovereign, the Holy One of blessing. Page 287 or 591. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. We express this thought in Hebrew, the Ne'emar, in the middle of 287 or 591. The Emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad
Ushamo, Ushamo, Ushamo Echad. 294 or 598, the Mourner's Kaddish. We especially want to remember our dear friend Mark Sosnick, who recently passed away, and the following people who have yard sites: Rebecca Lindy Morris, Mike Olaf, and Carolyn Hodson Kahn, and everybody else who needs somebody to say Kaddish for them. Together, Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, v'Yolama Divrach Hirutei v'Yamlich Malchutei, v'Chayechon v'Yomechon u'v'Chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'Gala u'Vizman Kariv, v'Imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach le'olam u'olamei olamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'yolama v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to all of us, to all Israel, to all people everywhere, to which we say, Amen. I hope you have some wine that you can take in hand for the Kiddush, a prayer in which we thank God for the holy rest of Shabbat. It's a wonderful gift, and we say we're going to symbolize our joy through the drinking of wine. If you have your book, it's on page 5 or 123. And please stand up with your wine if you have it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kadsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'remeshit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zeicher litziyat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol havamim b'shabbat kodechecha b'ahava uveratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Before I have some challah, I'm going to wash my hands. I hope you will too if you have some challah. In English, the blessing is, thank you, dear God, for the holy mitzvah of washing our hands. I'll be right back. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So good. So, final blessing. If you finish your challah, repeat after me. If you want to bless somebody, you can put your hands on them if they're there and you want to bless them. Or if they're not there, but you want to bless somebody away from you, send the blessing out and repeat after me. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka. May God's face light up towards you. And may God be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's face be lifted up towards you, and may God grant you peace. Ken Yehi Ratzon. So may it be God's will. Shabbat Shalom. Everybody have a holy, joyous, safe Shabbat and the rest of the week. And then I'll see you again, or imagine seeing you again and be with you next week. Shabbat Shalom.